Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
PD Beats here from Popternative, speaking to Nick Creegan about Batwoman on the CW. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, PD Beats. What's going on, man?
Oh man, it's so exciting. I mean, you do such a great job on the show. I'm really happy to chat with you. It's pretty crazy, man, because if I was wearing a Batman shirt when I was growing up, basically in the 90s, I'd get teased or like made fun of, right? Now it's like cool. Yeah, it's like cool to be a nerd, right? Like when did you notice that shift where like geek culture, comic book culture became like the big thing, man?
You know what's crazy? I grew up in the 90s too, but for whatever reason, I think I lived in a peculiar pocket of New York where comic book nerds were the norm. Like everybody was either into Pokemon or comic books, and I was actually a Pokemon nerd myself.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, like trading cards, Yu-Gi-Oh, all of that stuff was my thing. And then I had other friends in school that were really big into comic books. But I feel like mainstream wise, it really probably happened whenever people started to realize that these things were valuable, maybe. And people started collecting more comic books and kind of knew that you could make money from it. But in terms of a fan perspective, I don't know. I've always felt like comic book, maybe it's because I am from New York. And in New York, like Spider-Man obviously is depicted in New York. Gotham City, you could say, is like an old version of New York.
Yeah, the New York thing makes sense. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I feel like where I grew up, everybody kind of respected who knew about comic books. And what's crazy is you couldn't really act like you were into comic books if you weren't when I was a kid.
Oh, totally. I could see that for sure. No, it's just like when like a superhero movie comes out, it's like the talk of the town by a mile.
Yeah.
You're right.
No, it's like you have to do your homework. You have to know what characters are what. Like the word I saw this lady on the news. There was a viral clip of her making a mistake of claiming one of the Marvel characters to be DC or something of that nature. She was like, yeah, this reminds me of when Marvel released the Batman and I'm just like, ooh, that's a
oh man, I've seen so many interviews too where like they're talking about like DC or even vice versa, and like the actor is just there and they're asking all these Marvel questions, and it's like, what are we doing here?
You can't do that. So no, I get nervous whenever I talk to real comic book fans because I feel like I need to know exactly what I'm talking about. I can't it's like doing your homework before a quiz. So
we're gonna get into Batwoman specifically and your background too. I'm curious how you got into storytelling as well. But getting back to also that comic book stuff, it blows my mind the library of characters from these comic books. Like, everything's being adapted these days. There could be like a villain in one that shows up one time in like in Superman or Batman, and they're like, let's make a whole world out of that. Like, there's so many characters. That's cool too, right?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And especially from my perspective, I think the villains are always the more interesting people like Dr. Freeze and like Scarecrow and all of these like villains. Like obviously they come from a super dark like you want to know what happened to them to like make them have this turn. So I feel like it would be really cool if more villain origin stories were created.
Yeah.
Because like when Joaquin Phoenix's Joker came out and I saw that was the first time in my life where I was like actually rooting for the Joker. It was weird. I found myself kind of saying like, damn, Bruce Wayne, his whole family, like they're pretty much just like rich assholes. Like I kind of
the switch. Cobra Kai did that a little bit too. Like with like the Karate Kid, Daniel LaRusso was like seen as like the jerk.
Yeah. You see how success and money and all of these like accolades can possibly change somebody, and then the person who is on the outs, and who the guy from Cobra Kai, his kid, he lost the tournament back in the day, and then the Karate Kid,
man,
it's like you kind of flip flop.
It's so good. I mean, Batwoman, you're part of obviously like an iconic world with so many amazing kind of characters, and you get to kind of play like an iconic character essentially. I mean, what's that kind of like for you, man? What's that whole situation like where you kind of dive into the world of Batwoman like this, man?
It's so surreal. It's like, I mean, I grew up watching the animated Batman cartoon, and that was always just a huge deal for me. The WB was always a big channel of
Yes, absolutely. WB for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Where they would have everything from Batman to like the Looney Tunes, the Animaniacs and things of that nature. I feel like for me, this world is just it's one of those things where you kind of just have to get embedded into it and lose yourself in the character. And sometimes it doesn't feel like it's a fake world. It almost feels like Gotham City is a real place. And it's fun to let your inner child kind of run wild with the idea of taking over Gotham City. It's wild to see myself taking on this iconic role for sure. I love it.
How did you like the development of like finding out that it was kind of like a version of the Joker? Like, how did that come to be? I'm curious about that. That's exciting to me.
It's awesome because, from the day I found out about the role, I found out I booked the role on like a random Tuesday night. I was actually in Queens. I was living in Queens, and it was July. It was either July 1st or 2nd, and fireworks were going off that night. They were doing like pre-July 4th fireworks. I'm riding my bike, listening to music, and I just came from buying some Chinese food, and then I get a call at like 9:30 at night from my agent, and he's like, "Hey, what are you up to?" I'm like, "I'm just about to eat dinner, nothing crazy." But I'm wondering, like, why are you calling me? So he's like, "Did you get champagne with your dinner?" And I'm like, "No, why? What's happening?" He's like, "Well, you're moving to Vancouver in like 4 weeks, so I hope you're ready. You booked Batwoman." And I'm super excited, but at the time, I'm thinking like, "Oh, Marcus Jet, cool." And then fast forward 4 weeks, the day before I leave to go to Vancouver, role itself, and she's kind of chuckling because I guess she knows I have no clue that this Joker thing is going to happen. Mm-hmm. So she just lets me know, and I just lose it. I'm like, what? How is that even a real thing? I get kind of scared. I'm like, I'm following, like, the last Joker I saw was Joaquin Phoenix, and he completely killed it. He won an Oscar.
Yeah.
So,
so what's the early mindset then? I'm just curious about even before you go in and work.
So the first moment I heard it, I'm in shock.
Yeah.
And then I'm excited. And then all of a sudden that excitement turns into complete anxiety and fear because I'm like, these are some of the most legendary actors that have ever played this
anytime there's an adaptation, though, I feel like there's always going to be that pressure. But I feel like the excitement will trump the pressure, though.
Yeah, eventually the excitement completely trumped the pressure, and I was ready to go like the next day. But then, you think of, there was like a lot of controversy with Jared Leto's Joker, and some people, like these comic book fans, are like really serious about how these characters are going to be portrayed. So you're at everyone's mercy once you put your art on a platter and let people see it. But I was like, this is going to be the first Joker of this kind. I'm going to put my own spin on it. And then I just kind of let loose. And so far the reviews have been good. So I'm happy that people are receiving it well.
And, just a general question now, we'll get back to it quickly, but Nick Creegan is a storyteller. That's what you do, essentially. Yeah. You're a storyteller. Yeah. What excites you about storytelling, Nick?
Well, the thing that excites me the most about storytelling is the fact that somebody is actually down to listen. Like you're curating an experience for somebody. I've always been down to curate experiences for people. Ever since I was a kid, I was always the one in my family that wanted to tell jokes. And, I would always have a story to tell. My father was a great storyteller. He would make up these wild, crazy tall tales, and I would actually believe them. So I always loved it. Went from doing a lot of imaginative performing with my family as a kid to then being a journalist. So I was interviewing people and doing what you're doing. And I was kind of like telling stories through that and writing. And I just love being able to bring people into my world and give them an experience. It's always been a fun thing for me.
So that interests me because I've noticed this, and I guess it depends. So we're doing an interview now, like I'm interviewing you. So I'm the interviewee and you're being interviewed. You said you've done the other way where you were interviewing people. I'm gonna be honest with you, man. Like I get asked to go on podcasts as to be interviewed, right? Yeah. I can't do it as much, man. Like it's weird. Like I like asking the questions. Like I don't want to be answering.
It's so weird. Like it's a funny thing because I never would have imagined, I used to interview athletes for a living, and sometimes I would interview actors, but I would have never imagined like 5 years later everything would be flipped on its side, and then people are going to be doing their homework about me and asking me things that I'm like, wow, how did they even know that? You know what I mean? It's like it's
no,
kind
but
of like an invasion. I don't like an invasion.
I don't like doing I'm not a big fan of being interviewed, man. Like legit, like
it's fun.
It's tough for me because when I'm like asking the questions and I feel like I'm not like put on the spot as much, maybe.
I mean, you get the one asking the questions is the one that holds the, you have the controller and you're like deciding which way it goes. But
absolutely, but like setting talking points and everything, the point of an interview, Nick, you know this from your background interviewing. I mean, everyone wants. Like, we're here to make a cool conversation. We're here to promote amazing art, and we're here just to make sure everyone's comfortable having a good time. That's my ideal thing about an interview. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're the vibe curator. You're like providing the vibe essentially, which is dope.
I love that vibe curator. That's unreal.
You should coin that. You could have that. I'll give.
No. That's all you. That's all you. Let's go back a little bit to Batwoman and everything because, you're part of this amazing kind of DC universe with all these amazing characters. And not only are these iconic characters, Nick, they're amazing characters. They are global characters to the point where these are characters that are appreciated and loved all around the world. Yeah. So what is that like for you to be part of a world?
Actually, it's funny you say that because after... I think it was episode 3 or 4. I was able to see the fans in Brazil. Like, so Batwoman, for whatever reason, is huge in Brazil.
Yep, I saw that too.
All of these translations, like my text on screen, like my words that were scripted out on screen on Instagram in Portuguese. And I'm like able to go and translate that and learn a little bit of Portuguese. Somebody sent me a dubbed version of one of the episodes, episode 7. It was dubbed in Russian. I'm listening to myself talk in Russian. It was just wild. So to know that what we do is heard all over the world. And
it's global. It becomes global.
It's so nuts. It's wild. And I mean, I like Law and Order. I was in Law and Order before this, and the fan base of Law and Order is also a serious, huge one.
Yep.
But I really am starting to realize that there really is nothing like the comic book fan base.
It's insane.
It's everywhere. Yeah.
It also seems like, I find this interesting because Batwoman, like, episodes air and then it like takes a break and then it's back for a new season, right? Like, you know how it is, right? Yeah. And then like there's ebbs and flows of like, people talking about shows, right? Like, but like there's no shelf, like, Batwoman, like the hype is continual. I feel like, do you know what I mean by that? Whether there's a new season on or not, there's kind of with the DC stuff, there's this like continual wave that's not going anywhere.
There's a built-in fan base that's always going to be there, and then you're going to gain some new ones. Some of those might drop off, but there's this built-in. Like I see the same Twitter handles every week. Like, it's like I look forward to seeing what certain fans have to say about each episode because I know I can count on them being attentive every single week in and out. So, yeah, they're great. These fans are really, truly some of the best in the world, in my opinion.
And before we wrap up, the obvious answer to this question is you hope they enjoy it, they have a good time, because that's what storytelling's for and content's for. But when they get to watch Batwoman on the CW, what do you hope they get out of it takeaway-wise?
Takeaway wise, I just hope that they know we do it for them. You know, like granted, we're performing for ourselves, we're making a living and all of that. But at the end of the day, if nobody watched it, then there would be no point in doing it, right?
That's a very good point.
Literally everything we do out on that set, whether we're there for 12 hours in a day or 20 hours on a set, it's really for everyone to be able to digest it and enjoy it. So, you know, we do it all for the people that watch it.
Absolutely. Nick, I wanted to thank you for taking some time to chat about Batwoman on Popternative with me. Thank you so much, man. This was awesome.
PD Beats, the vibe curator. No problem.
I'm not taking that. That's all you. I'm not. That's you. Okay, so Batwoman on the CW, so they can check that out. And where can they follow you on social media to keep update with everything?
They could follow me on all handles at Nick Creegan. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, this has been Popternative, youtube.com/Popternative for previous episodes. Until next time, this is Nick Creegan from Batwoman on the CW and PD Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.